And do you ever remember any explanations from Nikolas about the things that he was destroying in the house, or why he was doing that?
Again, it always pointed back to the game. He was probably upset that his mom had taken the game away.
And so when you say taking the game away, how would she do that? How would she take the game away from him?
She would lock them, obviously plug everything out and lock them in her minivan.
Minivan out in the driveway?
Mostly in the garage.
Okay, in the garage. And did you ever see any damage to the minivan itself?
A broken window.
Okay. And based on what you knew at the time, did you have any idea about how that window was broken?
No, I don't have the details of how that happened.
Okay.
You don't have the details of?
How the window broke.
Was it during that time, though, that you knew that she'd been locking some things in the car to keep them away from Nikolas?
It could have been, yeah, because she did that quite frequently, so it could have been.
And in terms of his behavior, did you obtain information while you were his case manager about his behavior at school?
Yes, met with the school a few times.
And can you give us an idea of what you knew about his behavior at school during that sort of spring to fall of 2013?
He was disturbing classes, whether that was with like throwing paper. I believe there was also an instance where he was pulling the fire alarm. He had 4 grades. And other specific instances I don't recall.
Okay. May I approach Ms. Forshaw?
You may.
Of course, I just wanted to show you a page from Defense Exhibit 81. And just ask you to look that over about a meeting at or about school.
Okay.
Does that remind you of that
Yes.
meeting that you had?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I know you were saying some things about his behavior at school. And can you tell us the purpose of this meeting?
It was to get him assessed based on the reports from the specific teachers,
Okay.
because they all had, they were all having some issue with him. They
Okay.
were all able to report some issue.
All right. May I publish this document, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. And if you would, Ms. Forrest, just so that we were all on the same page, when it says CM, who's that?
Case manager.
So that would be you?
Yes.
And then who's CL?
Client.
Okay. Let me just see if there are any other acronyms on here. If you would just read us that first paragraph, and this is, just to be clear, this is a memorialization of the meeting that you had, is that correct?
With the school staff, yes.
Yes, ma'am. And this would have been at what school?
Oh, I don't remember the names of the schools he attended.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, ma'am.
I don't remember the names of the schools he attended.
That's all right. But if you would just read us that first paragraph, please.
CM met with mother and school staff for the purpose of school meeting. Meeting started off with introductions of
little
all
slower, please.
team members present. Client's math teacher was the first person to discuss the client's behaviors and progress in her class. Math teacher explained that she had found the client to be very disruptive in her class and unable to stay on task. She also provided team with examples of the client's disruptive behaviors. Client currently has a grade of 0 in his math class for not completing or handing in any of the assignments.
All right, and is him having trouble with assignments, is that something that you experienced when you were managing Nick in the home?
Yeah, frequently.
Okay. And what kind of help did you think that he needed in terms of being able to complete his schoolwork?
It definitely was beyond tutoring because he just wouldn't do it. So you wouldn't be able to actually gauge if it was him not understanding it or just didn't complete the work.
Did you ever actually see his schoolwork, or?
I had a few instances where he had shown his mom what was in his book bag, and all the paper was just crushed. All the assignments were rolled up into balls. The books were torn. There was no content of schoolwork really in any of his books.
Okay. Thank you. If you will continue reading for us on that document, where it begins language arts.
Language arts teacher finds that the client behaves like a class clown and oftentimes adds profanity to many of his writing assignments. Language arts teacher expressed that she helps the client to do his assignments, but the client oftentimes does not attempt to do any of the work on his own.
Okay. And if you'll just continue for that next 3 lines, please.
Reading teacher expressed that the client is disruptive in her class and oftentimes causes the other children to stay off task because they are paying attention to him. Teacher also expressed that the client uses very negative words in his assignments. Reading teacher provided team with work that the client has done in her class which was poorly done or filled with profanity.
And profanity, I think you've sort of alluded to it in terms of what Nick would say to his mother, but is profanity something that you observed when you were case managing in the Cruz home?
Yes.
Okay. And who was using the profanity?
Nikolas and Zachary throughout the home.
And who were they sort of directing that language to?
Each other or their mom.
Okay. And in terms of the way that they would use curse words toward their mother, would you, from your perspective as a case manager, did that strike you as something that was actually verbally abusive to her?
Yes.
All right. If you'll continue reading for me, please. That's science teacher.
Science teacher explained that she oftentimes has to send the client out of the class because he's too disruptive. Science teacher provided many examples of the different ways that the client disrupts the class. Environmental science teacher expressed to team that he has to constantly keep the client by his side so that the client does not injure other students or himself. Environmental science teacher explained that he has told the client every class to not swing the rakes because he will end up hurting someone. Environmental science teacher expressed that he might not be able to keep the client in his class much longer if his poor behavior continues. History teacher expressed that the client does not do any assignments in her class and purposely writes all over the assignments or the assignments of other students.
And the descriptions that you're getting from these teachers, is this all news to you, or is this sort of information that you generally had before?
No, it was only understood that he was having issues at school, but this was the meeting to actually understand what those issues were.
Okay. And so is this a meeting that becomes important in terms of what you think this family needs?
Yes.
Okay. If you'll continue reading, I think you were down to where it says support facilitator, is that right?
Yes, support facilitator expressed that she has watched the client on several occasions in the hallways purposely hitting other students. She also expressed that she has asked the client not to do that, but catches him doing it the following day. Guidance counselor expressed that she too has noticed the client misbehaving in the hallways and oftentimes explains to him that if he's acting out for some specific reason, he can come and discuss it with her at any time. Mother expressed to team that she believes the client is acting out because negative attention is the only attention he gets at school. Mother also expressed to team that client is often bullied in school and that she will not tolerate it for another school year. Mother also expressed to team that she believes that the client has Asperger's syndrome. Mother explained to team that the client gets bullied by his younger brother as well. The 8th grade administrator, who was present for the meeting, explained that he has come up with a few ideas to help the client succeed this school year. First, he would like to try to have the functional behavioral assessment completed. This is where the teachers and parents will answer questions about the client so that the behavioral plan can be made to address the different behavioral concerns. He also expressed that he will be building a child study team to come up with best solutions. Case manager inquired about the functional behavioral assessment, when the functional behavioral assessment will start, and how it can be monitored to ensure that it is being done in a timely manner. Case manager also expressed to administrator that once the assessment is completed, another meeting should be scheduled to ensure that mother and team are aware of what is taking place.
And so that concluding paragraph about case manager inquired about when the functional behavioral assessment could begin, that's you?
Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of what the teachers and administrators at this meeting were coming up with, did you agree with the plan that they were putting together?
Yes, it sounded like something that would work for him at the time.
Okay. Thank you. And had you heard from Linda before that meeting that he had been getting in trouble in school?
Yes, but vaguely.
Okay. So the details that you documented there, those were things that you hadn't known before?
Right, so the school meeting was to determine what those issues were.
Right. And when you learned the sort of the extent of his bad behavior at school, was that surprising to you?
No.
Does that mean it was sort of consistent with what you'd seen at the home?
Yes.
While you were managing Nick, in conversations with Linda about the services that you thought were appropriate, did the concept of her finances ever come up?
Finances were discussed often.
Okay. And can you tell us why?
Because any resource that was made available to her, she would mention that she couldn't afford it, whether it was because she had to purchase something or pay for something the following week, but finances were often discussed.
Okay. From your perspective, was the financial issue something that became an impediment to you being successful with this family?
Absolutely.
When you were managing, well, let me just add one question before I ask you that. You began managing Nick, I think you said in May of 2013.
Yes.
Did you also subsequently wind up being a case manager for Zach as well?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know approximately when that started?
It would have probably been closer to September, maybe.
Okay.
Around
Okay.
there.
During that summer of 2013, do you know whether or not Linda got the boys involved in any kind of summer camps?
No, but I do remember recommending a few to her.
Okay. And do you remember her telling you why she did not get them involved in summer camps?
Because she couldn't afford it.
Okay. Did she tell you the types of things that she was doing with them that summer instead of things like camp or extracurricular activities?
No, but it was suggested in conversation that she could do things like the parks or the the beach, something that was free, that she could take them to.
Okay. And do you know if she ever did something like take them to the beach?
She didn't.
She did not?
No.
And do you remember why she told you she did not take them to the beach?
No.
Okay. And in terms of, well, let me ask you this. Were part of your recommendations that she have Nikolas assessed by a medical doctor or psychiatrist?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. During the course of case managing, any of the recommendations or referrals that you made, were they to Linda to get Nick assessed or evaluated
Yes.
or something? Okay. And was she resistant to getting him evaluated for some things?
She came across as wanting to actually get the recommendation done, whether it was an assessment or any resource really, but then when you followed up, she didn't. So in your initial conversations, yes, it appeared as if she was willing to follow through with it, but she never actually did.
Okay. And what was your understanding of the reasons why she didn't follow through, or did she ever tell you?
So she didn't feel comfortable transporting the boys at one point because they were disruptive to her as she was driving. And additionally, a lot of the services that they would needed required co-pays that she was unwilling to pay.
Okay. What about any sports activities? Did you ever recommend that?
I might have.
Okay. And do you have any idea whether or not she ever followed through?
I'm almost sure she didn't.
Okay. Well, you were managing Nick. Was hygiene an issue that you addressed?
Yes.
And can you tell us why that was?
Linda had mentioned that he wasn't taking showers, he wasn't brushing his teeth, he wasn't taking care of any of his own personal hygiene needs. So we had sat down one day and had a discussion regarding that, and he actually got up and jumped in the pool and said, "See, I showered." So that was to the extent of our discussions.
Okay. And did you attempt to create some sort of plan for him for his hygiene?
Yes, we did sit down and discuss, showering, how many times a day he was comfortable with, a few times.
Did you make anything with him to help him remind him to do those things?
Yeah, we wrote it.
Okay.
It was something that we were writing so that he could see it.
Okay. And do you remember the things that would have been on that list?
Brushing his teeth, washing his face. It really was the basic things to get ready for school. So.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about some of the referrals that you made. And did you ever make referrals specifically sort of because Linda brought up a particular issue?
Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's family choice.
Okay. And then did you also make recommendations sort of based on your own knowledge and experience about things that you thought might be helpful?
Sure, and with input from the whoever is working with him from a clinical team.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't understand you.
What part of it?
Could you repeat your answer?
So whoever is working with him on the clinical team would also make recommendations. So those referrals would be made based off of those recommendations as well.
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am, you have to slow down. I don't think you realize you talk pretty fast. And it's hard to follow.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, that's helpful.
What was it? Lord. Oh, okay.
So for me to continue on?
Sure.
Thank you. So, and I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like I may have made the mistake of making it seem like you're on your own, but you're actually really a part of a team, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And who else is part of that team?
At the time, he had a therapist from Camelot who we communicated with frequently. She did home visits as well to do therapy sessions. I'm not sure how many times of the week she went, but she did also meet with him.
Okay. And do you remember that therapist's name?
Amanda.
Amanda Brown?
Yes.
Okay. And you said she worked for?
Camelot.
Okay. And is the reason that they got that service because you recommended that or you referred them to Camelot?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like that's a referral that Linda actually took you up on, is that fair?
That is fair to say.
Okay. What about, or let me ask you this, did the idea of having Nick assessed or evaluated for Asperger's syndrome ever come up?
A few times.
Okay. And how did that, did you bring that up? Did Linda bring it up?
Linda brought it up.
All right. And what did you do in response to her concern about that?
Referred her to card services at Nova.
At Nova?
Yes.
Okay. And what's Nova?
Nova Southeastern University.
Okay. Did you know that that university had some sort of program specific to that?
Yes.
Okay. And regarding having Nick assessed for Asperger's, is that a recommendation that Linda followed through that you made?
No.
Okay. Can you tell us what the Family Strengthening Program is?
The Family Strengthening Program is I believe, the multidisciplinary team that has a therapist and a behavioral tech who would work with the family.
Okay. And they're part of what organization?
If I recall, that was Henderson.
Okay. And is that a referral that you made for the Cruz family?
Yes.
And do you have any idea whether the Family Strengthening Program, if a family is referred to that program, do they stay there until they resolve the issues, or is it a limited number of sessions, or do you know?
I don't recall the parameters that that program operates on.
That's all right. What about medications? Do you know if Nikolas was on medications when you were his case manager?
He was at one point, but I also recall having a discussion with his mom where she took him off of the medication.
Okay. And do you remember her explanation for why she took him off his medication?
She thought he didn't need it.
She thought he didn't need it?
Right.
Okay. And based on the conversation, do you know whether or not she actually consulted with his doctor about taking him off the medication?
No, she didn't. It was through our conversations, I encouraged her to reach out to the doctor before deciding to take him off of the medication.
Okay. And can you tell us what Faith Farm is?
Faith Farm provides furniture. Well, at that time, they were providing furniture to individuals who couldn't afford it elsewhere.
All right. And was there ever a referral that you made to Linda about Faith Farm?
Yes, there was.
And why would you refer her to Faith Farm?
To replace furniture that might have broken in the home,
Okay.
or to get furniture because there wasn't much furniture in the house.
Okay. And when you say furniture in the house that may have been broken, you mean it was destroyed by Nick and Zach?
Yes.
Can you tell us what a parent support partner is?
That would be someone that the mom could reach out to if she felt like she was overwhelmed and needed somebody to speak to regarding anything, more of a friend, a support within the community for her, because she really lacked a lot of natural supports.
Okay. And when you say natural supports, what do you mean by that?
Friends, family,
Okay.
anybody outside of the professional team.
Okay. And so, based on your observations, she lacked those kinds of supports?
Yes.
From your perspective as a case manager for Henderson, how important are those natural supports to a person or a family?
They're very important because those natural supports are who keeps the family together when the professional supports are out of their life. So the case management's not coming as often. They need another support system.
Okay. And the parent support partner, the people that serve in that role, are they actual employees of Henderson or are they volunteers?
I believe that referral was made to an outside organization, not Henderson. No, I don't recall which that was at this time, but that was another referral source, not Henderson.
Okay. And so did you recommend to Linda Cruz that she get a parent support partner?
Yes,
Did you recommend that to her more than once?
yes.
And did she ever take you up on that?
I don't believe so, no.
At some point, in the records that you generated during that time, there's the issue maybe having Nick assessed for autism, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And do you remember how that came about, or was that based on a specific concern that you or Linda had?
Linda had a specific concern.
And how frequently in your conversations would that come up that because it was concerned he may have autism?
It came up a few times.
Okay. And did you encourage her to have him evaluated for autism?
Yes,
And do you have any idea whether or not she ever followed through on that recommendation?
she did not. At least at the time that I had the case, she didn't.
Okay. Part of that meeting at the school that you had, I think, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you saw or were told about some of the drawings that Nick had been making at school. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Violent drawings and sexually explicit drawings. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you ever recommend to her meaning Linda, did you ever recommend to Linda that she take steps to have him evaluated regarding that specific issue of those drawings?
Yes,
And do you have any idea whether or not she ever followed through on that recommendation by you?
she did not.
What about after-school activities? I know we talked about in the summer, but did you recommend to her after-school activities?
I believe we did have a conversation about that, but I don't recall it specifically being for Nicholas. I think it was with Zachary.
Okay. And do you have any idea whether or not she ever followed through on that being a good idea?
No, she didn't.
And what was the reason, at least from your perspective, about why she didn't follow through on that?
I don't believe she gave a specific reason for the after-school activities, because she didn't place much emphasis on that. So I don't really have an answer for that.
Okay. You mentioned when you were talking or telling us about the financial issue that the copay for her insurance was a problem for her. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Did you ever discuss with her about creating a budget for herself?
Yes, we did talk about creating a budget several times, in addition to figuring out how best we could serve her. She never really divulged the full picture of their finances. So even if we were to seek assistance for her, we wouldn't be able to because there wasn't enough information.
Okay. And in trying to create a budget, was part of that aimed towards so that she could afford these copays?
Correct. Co-pays and any of the activities that were recommended.
Okay. Going back just briefly to the concept of natural supports that you mentioned, did Linda ever express to you that she wanted to go visit family that she had?
Yes, I believe she did.
And is that something that you tried to help her organize?
Yes, we did have a discussion about plane tickets at one point. I believe it was in New York, if I remember, that she had some natural supports there.
Okay. And do you know whether or not she ever followed through on going to visit them?
And not when I was in the home.
But just while you were there, of course, is all you know. And what about, did you make any recommendations to Linda about ways that she could increase the level of communication that she had with her family up in New York?
Yes, we talked about it a few times, reaching out, I think via, social media, or we had a small discussion about that. Also using maybe her phone for FaceTime or anything in that respect.
Okay,
Pretty sure it probably wasn't FaceTime, whatever it was that she had at that time.
right, whatever it was back
Yeah.
then. And was she hesitant about getting some technology to communicate with her family up north?
Yes.
Okay. And why was she concerned about getting that technology?
She thought the boys would destroy it.
Judge, I probably only have maybe 15 or 20 minutes more, but if you want to take a break, I just don't know if anybody needs a break.
No, I think, we should be good. We've only been going about an hour.
Okay. All right.
The juries usually tell the bailiff if they need a break, right?
All right. I'm sorry, I lose track of time. I'm up here. There are a couple other things, Ms. Forrest, I just wanted to ask you about regarding a couple of specific visits that you had at the Cruz family house. I may approach Ms. Forrest.
You may.
Ms. Forrest, I'm just going to show you one document that was in the various documents that were admitted into evidence, and just, can you explain to us what that is?
It's a mental health outcome. It's a state reporting document.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you.
It's a mental health outcome. It's a state reporting document.
And is this a document that was generated by Henderson?
Yes, this would be a part of our documentation.
And would this be a document that was filled in by a single person or various different people?
So it depends. If an individual, one person completes this document, but it's because it's not how do I explain this? Whoever opens the case first would do the initial. It's something that's updated every 3 months. So whoever is also on the case on the third month would update it or complete it, discharge whatever is necessary at that time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Here, may I publish this one page?
You may.
And I'm just going to look at the sort of the top section, and I'll move it ahead. So you said this has to be updated every 3 months, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of information there at the top just regarding the time frame, and there's your name there. And I just wanted to ask you about a few different things that are on this form. And where it says on the left-hand column there, it says at risk of emotional disturbance, and then it says yes. And can you tell us who's filling out this document or this form? How would they populate the information under those questions?
It's a option, so it's either a drop-down or like a multiple choice setup in the system. I don't quite recall which one it is, but you have options.
Okay. And this is obviously, because his name is up there at the upper left-hand side, this is all information that pertains to Nikolas Cruz, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And do you know specifically which member of the Henderson team would have populated these different prompts on this form?
I completed this form at the time. What would populate is the diagnosis, if it's there. Yeah, the diagnosis would have populated.
Okay. That would have populated by somebody else from the team?
Correct, the clinical team member.
Okay. And so when it comes to, on the left-hand column again there, a couple of lines down from where it said at risk of emotional disturbance, it says developmentally disabled ? And then I guess you chose unknown from the drop-down menu, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And when you are filling out these forms and you're, based on your experience and knowledge, if you're forced to choose unknown, it might sound like kind of a stupid question, but what's that mean when you choose unknown?
So to accurately answer that question, there would have to be some evaluation completed to validate that answer. And at that time, there was, at least I was told that no evaluation was completed.
Okay.
So that's why unknown was chosen.
Okay. And so in order for you to have chosen something other than unknown, there would have been more information you would need to have been privy to?
Yes.
Now, towards the bottom there, there's some references to school attendance, and in the last 30 days at least, and it mentions that it had been suspended. And as far as you knew, was that pertaining to some of the behaviors that you talked about earlier?
Yes, likely.
And what about there towards the bottom on the left-hand side where it says social connectedness? And before you tell us how you populated that, what does that mean, the concept of social connectedness?
Engaged in other activities, whether those are those after-school activities or anything that's extracurricular that they're doing in the school.
Okay. And maybe I'm wrong, but because it's on this form, is that something you consider to be an important part of a child's life?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you put in there no attendance in the past month, is that right?
Yes.
I think this would have been the summer. Yeah. Evaluation date there at the top says 8/27, so we're talking about the summer of 2013. So based on your conversations with Linda and your visits to the house, what did Nikolas do for that summer of 2013?
Not much. Specifically, I don't remember what his activities were. I know they weren't anything structured. It might have just been home with his mom.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Did Linda ever express to you that she felt that your case management and the things that you were referring to her, at least the ones that she followed through on, that she ever expressed to you that she thought they were helping with Nikolas and with the family?
She expressed that the services she was receiving from Henderson were a good support for her.
Okay.
She did express that a few times, that our presence in the home was helpful.
Okay. And did you feel like during the time that you were there, those 5 months from May to October 2013, Well, let me ask you this. Were you doing the best that you possibly could for this family?
Absolutely.
And were you making every referral that you thought could possibly be helpful?
Yes.
During that 5-month period of time, from your perspective, were things in the home improving or deteriorating?
They were not improving. They were getting worse. I would definitely have to say that the lack of engagement with the resources that she was given, you can tell that they needed more.
Okay. Did Linda ever express to you that Nick's behaviors were affecting her health?
Yes, she did.
Is that something that is alarming to you, or was it?
No,
Why not?
because you could see the frustration that she had, or whenever they would, when they were in the home and just, I guess, they're bickering back and forth or arguing with her, you could tell it did stress her to some degree.
Okay. I can't remember if I asked this or not before. I meant to. Was Nikolas ever verbally abusive to you when you were visiting the home?
He had been. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember the context in which that occurred?
Not quite, no.
Did he curse at you?
Yes, he did.
And despite Linda telling you that she felt like these services were a good help and support to her, did a time come when you felt like she didn't want any more help?
I felt like she wanted the help, but just didn't really engage in that or show that maybe she was overwhelmed or what have you, but I feel like she wanted it.
In your time going to the house, what did you spend the vast majority of your time doing when you were in the home?
Well, discussions with Linda. However, it was disruptive when you're trying to get through understanding what the current needs are, and the boys are either arguing or, she's back and forth with them. So, spending time in the home wasn't, a lot of the time was just kind of waiting for those moments of chaos to kind of dispel themselves,
Or was Linda, at least from your perspective, was she desperate for somebody to talk to?
Yes.
Did she ever call you at your office?
Yes, she did.
And tell us what those conversations were like.
They were mostly about her just venting. She was venting a lot, and obviously in those conversations we're redirecting and asking her if she'd follow up on certain resources to assist her with that problem that she was venting on. But it was just a lot of venting, which is why I think many times the parent support partner was discussed.
Okay. Did you ever have a conversation with your supervisor at Henderson about your phone calls with Linda?
Yes, I asked.
Objections would be hearsay.
She's going to say what she said, not what the supervisor said.
If what she says is an adequate statement, it's still hearsay.
Sustained.
Were the conversations that you had with Linda, did you spend time encouraging her to talk?
Objection leading.
Okay, ask open-ended questions, please.
Did you have to repeatedly make the same recommendations to Linda?
Yes.
Did you feel like, despite talking to Linda a lot,
Objection leading.
Okay, this is direct examination. Please ask open-ended questions.
did you believe that you got the full picture of what was going on in the family from Linda?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Did you feel like there was anything missing from the information that you were getting from Linda?
Yes.
Did you feel as though she was withholding information from you?
Objection leading.
That's not,
Sustained,
can you
sustained.
please have a side? Did you ever learn anything about Nicholas's biological mother?
No.
Did Linda ever mention her at all?
Once, but it wasn't in the initial phase of the case.
Okay. And from the perspective of case management, is that information that could potentially be important to you?
Yes.
And how could it be important in terms of the things that you would recommend?
Objections, speculation.
It's her job.
Okay. Remember what we went over yesterday, please. The objection is overruled. You can answer.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. How is it that from the perspective of case management for you, and the referrals that you're trying to make, how is it important to know something about a person's biological family?
Because it helps to paint the picture of what's going on, especially in cases like that where the home that you're in it's not the original family. It helps you to give the clinical team some insight too into what services they're providing.
Okay. And so if you get information about a person's biological family, what do you do with that information as a case manager?
Well, it depends on what that information is.
Okay. So if an adoptive parent were to tell you, my adopted son's biological mother was a drug addict or an alcoholic, what do you do with it?
Sustained.
Is that information potentially relevant to you?
Objection.
Sustained.
During the time that you were providing services to the Cruz family, did you ever learn that Linda was ever fearful in her own home?
Yes,
And did you learn that from her?
from her.
And do you know what it was that she was afraid of?
Mostly her personal belongings becoming missing. Because I do recall her walking around with her purse all the time, because she thought that the boys would take things from her.
Okay. Were there any issues that you identified when you were providing services or case management to the Cruz family regarding food in the home?
Yes.
And what were those?
She rationed the food, the specific amounts for this meal, and or this meal had to wait for another time. But I've never, at least I didn't observe them being able to just go in the fridge and take what they wanted.
Did Linda ever say anything about feeling physically threatened by Nick in the home?
I don't recall.
Okay. Just want to ask you a little bit about your impressions of Nick during that period of time. How did you feel about his maturity at that point?
He was definitely immature for his age.
I'm sorry, what did you say, please?
He was definitely immature for his age.
Okay.
And I think when you started with the family, he was 13 or 14, does that sound right?
I believe he was 13.
Yeah, he was born in 1998. So maybe, yeah, maybe
14.
14.
Yeah.
To you, did he act like a 14-year-old?
No,
How did he act?
more like an 8-year-old.
And in terms of his, I don't know how to describe it, but his episodes or his explosive behavior in the home, what was your impression of what was motivating that?
Oftentimes losing his gaming privileges.
Oftentimes,
Losing his gaming privileges.
And were these episodes or things that he would do in terms of destruction of furniture in the house or his verbal abuse of Linda? Did you believe that these were things that were thought out by him?
It wouldn't appear so, no.
Did you ever have conversations with Nikolas about these outrageous behaviors that he was exhibiting?
I might have, yes, we did have a conversation.
And do you remember him trying to explain to you what was going on with him when they happened?
He tried to explain himself, but it didn't make sense, to me at least. It didn't make sense.
I mean, he was speaking in words that you understood, I assume.
Not all the time. He was just babbling.
Okay.
It wasn't, sometimes you really didn't understand what he was saying.
From your perspective, did you get the impression that he understood why he was doing these things?
Sustained.
Based on your experience, did these appear to be volitional things that he was doing?
No.
When it comes to some of these outrageous behaviors, did he, while you were there, ever try to deny that he had done them?
Yes, a few times.
And do you remember what those pertain to?
It might have, actually there was an instance with there was something thrown in the pool, and Linda was saying that he had done it, and he said, no, that wasn't him. And he was pretty adamant about it not being him, but
Okay.
it was.
Were there other times when he did things that he did admit that he did?
No.
No. How did you think that he felt about the therapy that he was getting?
He did express at one point that it was helpful.
One last thing about the relationship between Zach and Nick. I think you said earlier that you felt as though Zach was trying to provoke him sometimes. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. Based on your observations when you were there, did Nick seem to understand what Zach was doing to him?
No. Oftentimes, no.
And why do you say no?
Because he would say some pretty mean things to him and he would laugh like he didn't quite understand that they were not good things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And could you tell that Zach was trying to be mean to him?
Yes.
Objection, meeting.
Sustained. Ask open-ended questions, please.
How did you wrap up or end your term serving as the case manager for the Cruz family? Why did it end?
Well, this case was staffed with my supervisor, and at that point, we decided that it would be best if they were stepped up to a higher level of care.
And was that a decision made just by you or with a group?
With the clinical team as well. So Amanda would have been a part of that, as well as my supervisor at the time.
All right. And what would a higher level of care look like from Henderson?
So for case management, it would be to step him up to another department that could provide more frequency. Also probably address additional needs that they had a broader scope of parameter to work within.
And tell us what wraparound services are.
Those services, are you referring to the department and how they operated, or wraparound services itself?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to understand what they are, because I think you said wraparound services is what you thought
They're
they
more
needed.
intensive, right? So the team at the time, which is what he was stepped up to, was able to provide more resources, more support, obviously with the family engaged in those things, but they would have more flexibility to provide additional services.
Okay. And do you remember who the case manager was that took over from you?
Yes.
And who was that?
Martha
Luthen?
Luthen, yes.
Okay. And is there a process of transitioning where you make sure that she has everything that you have?
Absolutely, there's a warm handoff. We discuss it, follow up on any services that needed to be completed or resources that needed to be refreshed or reached out to. So we would staff the case together before she met with the family.
And would you have expressed any concerns about the family that you had to Miss Luthen?
Yes, at that time.
And do you remember what those would have been regarding the Cruz family?
Following up on any of the resources that the school might have needed to complete, any tasks that the mom didn't complete at the time. So it'd really just be discussing whatever was hanging, whatever was left open.
Okay. During this period of time, summer, I guess spring to early fall of 2013, when you're spending this time with the Cruz family, did you feel as though Linda Cruz was doing all that she could for her family?
No.
Now, I have just a moment, please.
You may.
Sports, I forgot to ask you. You mentioned the program at Nova Southeastern University, right?
Yes,
And is that the CARD program?
yes, that's card services.
I'm sorry.
Card services.
And can you describe to us if somebody follows through on that recommendation from you, what types of things do they get at that program?
So if he was assessed for Asperger's as Linda had wanted him to, and it was deemed that he did fall on the spectrum somewhere, they would provide them with additional resources to address that specific diagnosis.
Okay. And are you aware during this period of time whether or not Camelot offered any financial assistance with their services?
As in direct financial services to assist with things in the home, or as there was a time where they did assist them with obtaining some items for the family.
For the Cruz family?
Yes, for the Cruz family.
Do you know what those were?
Amanda had, I believe she secured them a gift card for, a gift card to go to a specific restaurant. I don't recall which restaurant that was.
Okay. And I think the other thing you said is, you were asking me is whether they have financial services for the actual services that they, Camelot, provide. So do they have those?
I'm not certain.
Okay. And do you remember, for purposes of that meeting that you had at school, which that Westglades was the school where you met with those teachers, do you know whether or not the school reached out to you or whether you reached out to them?
I had reached out to the school for, to determine if they were completing the assessments that they said they would a few times.
Okay. And do you know, I think you said that when you were doing case management for the family, that Linda never took you up on the parent support partner, is that right?
Correct?
Do you have any idea whether or not she ever did afterwards?
No.
Okay.
Not sure.
Just another moment now.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Morris, appreciate it.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna take a 10 to 15-minute recess. Please do not discuss the case, and please leave your notepads behind. You can let the bailiffs know when you all are ready as usual. Thank you. Okay, we're in recess. I said 10 to 15 minutes because oftentimes, because there's 22 jurors and 2 bathrooms, it takes them longer than 10 minutes, but I would ask the lawyers to be as close to 10 minutes as possible. Ms. Forrest, you are welcome to take a recess, walk around, get a drink of water, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do, or you can feel free to stay sitting there, whichever is your preference. If you do leave, just please do not discuss your testimony with anyone, okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you. We're in recess.